I don't know a whole lot about this story beyond the fact that somebody got upset at work and then ostensibly murdered another. Was it one or two people? I think it was.
Two.
It was two people.
We're
I
also
think
supposed to assume they're not Highlanders.
Were both of them were both beheaded or just one? Just
The
one.
first.
Okay. So and you are a Muslim, and
Yeah.
so therefore you must have something valid to say on this topic. So fill us in.
Well, actually, I've been doing a little research into the person, this Alton Nelson, and there's a purported Facebook page that is being reported by some media outlets to belong to this gentleman, Alton Nelson.
Is it Alton Nelson or Alton Nolan?
Nolan, that's it,
Okay.
Alton Nolan. And I'm looking over the Facebook page, and immediately there's certain things that pop out at me. You guys know that I study the Salafi doctrine mainly for the purpose of being able to debate with people who have extreme views or who could have the chance to advocate or support people who advocate violence.
What is the Salafi doctrine?
Well, it's a newer religious doctrine in the Islamic tradition. It's been around for it's been influential for a little over 100 years. It was created in the late 1700s. They tried to have a revolution, took Mecca by force, and burned the libraries and such. Then they were driven
Always
back.
the first thing you want to burn. Let's burn the libraries.
Yeah. But they were driven back, and then the Brits noticed that they were crazy people and wanted to help overthrow the Ottoman Empire. So the Brits started funding their leader, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab al-Najd, like around 10,000 British pounds a month. And that's basically how we ended up with this doctrine becoming so influential. Was once these, the Al Sauds and the Al Sheikh family were able to take over Saudi Arabia and get their hands on all that oil wealth, they've basically been able to subsidize or export their, rigid view of Islam worldwide. Even though the scholars who were the foremost scholars of their time when this sect originated, they all called them deviants. They said that these people believe that they're the only ones who think that they're Muslim, and everyone else should be killed, even if they're Muslim. If they don't agree with them, we should kill them. They opened the door for murdering scholars. So these people are deviants. But that ideology has had the ability now to have $3 trillion of oil wealth backing it for 100 years. So, it's kind of hard to compete with that kind of money.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
But I've studied this ideology. I actually went to a university in Qatar that the guy who started the school is a very famous Salafi, so that I could study their ideology and understand it. And when I look at this guy's page, these are the people that flip out and go end up committing, go join ISIS and, blow themselves up. This is the sect that these people end up coming from.
Okay.
And there's certain things about them that are very telling. Like when they become Muslim, they pick Muslim names like Abdullah or Muhammad or Abdul Rahman. They don't pick Rastafarian names like Jakim, which is what this gentleman here has changed his name to, is Jakim Yisrael, which is an African name and a Hebrew name put together.
Africanized, yeah.
Now, where are you seeing the Jahib name? I'm seeing they're claiming he's called, let's see, Alton Nolan. Is not Suhaib Webb? Is that not someone else?
No. Suhaib Webb is a noted scholar who is a part of, some people call him part of the American Islam movement.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the foremost scholars in the U.S., and he's the guy that's giving sermons on the 13 virtues of Ben Franklin and on, Martin Luther King. He's born in Oklahoma. He's from there originally, but he lives in Boston. And
I see. Yeah, I misread this. There's a news article over at Breitbart where they bring Suhaib Webb up. He's apparently ostensibly the leader of the Islamic Society of Greater Oklahoma City, which was allegedly attended by this man, Alton Nolan, who did the
No,
supposed beheading.
he's originally from Oklahoma City, but he's currently the leader of the big mosque in Boston.
I see.
Yeah. But he's originally from Oklahoma City. That's where he became Muslim, was in Oklahoma City. But
Got
he
it.
now runs, like I said, a huge mosque in Boston.
Okay, so you're saying that that Alton Nolan picked a Rastafarian name for himself.
Well, actually, it's a name that would be common with the Black Israelite movement. They're like an extreme racially separatist movement. They believe that blacks are the original Israelites. They're somewhat militant. But the name that he chose wasn't a Muslim name. It was a name that is normally identified with the African Israelite movement. And when he speaks, his terminology is strange because,
And when you say speaks, do you mean his posts on his Facebook page, or have you actually heard him speak?
his posts on his Facebook page are odd because you've seen Davi and I interact with each other, and we say "Assalamu alaikum" to each other. But he doesn't say that. He says "Shalom aleichem," which is Hebrew. It's a Jewish greeting, not a Muslim greeting. So when he greets, he says "Shalom aleichem, O ye Muslims," on his Facebook page. I mean, I'm reading it right here in front of me. That's odd because Muslims don't say that. It's not something, that's a Hebrew term. It's something that is used specifically in Judaism, not in Islam. Muslims use the Arabic greeting. So, I mean, he also has pictures where he's taken photographs of girls that he says are inappropriately dressed at the mosque and then uploads them on his Facebook page. Salafis would do the opposite of that. Like, they would be so outraged they wouldn't want
that to be seen.
Definitely, yeah, wouldn't want to share that with the public. Like, I know Salafis that are friends of mine that are on my Facebook page that they want to find a way to get rid of the advertisements on the side because some of them have girls that are dressed in a way that they deem inappropriate and they don't want to have to look at it. I'm like, well, then just turn off your Facebook page.
So, are you suggesting this guy wasn't
Doesn't ad block work?
Are you suggesting this guy wasn't a Muslim, or that he was just really confused?
Well, yeah, it seems his Facebook makes him seem really schizophrenic because he's got a Black Israelite name. He's quoting Thessalonians in the Bible after giving a Jewish greeting as a Muslim.
What does that tell you? I mean, what does that say to you?
It seems like he's either very confused, or I mean, it makes sense that this man is mentally ill in some way. He uses the term "peace be upon him" like randomly in his posts. Like, they don't seem to have any. When Muslims say the name of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they say either sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Arabic, or they say "peace be upon him" in English. Well, he takes that term "peace be upon him" and just kind of drops it here and there in his Facebook posts, like with no rhyme or reason.
I think it's fascinating, and I want you to stick with us if you can. Do you have a little bit of time?
Sure. Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Will Cauley is with us from Muslims4Liberty.org. Just to sum up so far what you've said, you've pointed out this character, Alton Nolan, the alleged murderer, that he is supposedly one who subscribes to what you call the Salafi philosophy of Islam. And you sort of described the Salafi philosophy as one that embraces violence to some extent. That was my understanding of what you said, and do correct me if I'm wrong. But yet, when you looked at this guy's Facebook page, you saw some strange inconsistencies that led you to believe that this guy may just be a mentally ill person and doesn't really even understand the philosophy that he supposedly subscribes to.
Yeah. Well, a good example would be on his Facebook, August 7th, Jakim Yisrael, the verbiage, "A night at the Islamic Mosque in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, with two of my brothers from Morocco. Photo, peace be upon him. Amin."
Right. Why would you want to peace be upon a photo? Right.
Well, yeah. Why would you say Islamic Mosque? I mean, this isn't the way Muslims talk. Yeah, I've been Muslim for 7 years. I've been hanging out with Muslims. I went to a school specifically that taught a Salafi doctrine to be able to understand it, so that I had the ability to go out and to basically to debate and refute some of the ideas that are pushed. And it's not really that Salafis embrace violence. It's just that for some reason their group seems to be the one that these people most often come from.
Okay, I'm glad you clarified that, because I did see something when I pulled up the Salafi, and it's spelled Salafi. Pulled that up on Wikipedia. They do claim that there is a Salafi jihadi or jihadist movement. So maybe within the Salafis there are a portion of them who have taken on, embracing violence.
Yeah, well, they're the ones that they're strict literalists. They don't understand that sometimes religious texts have metaphor.
Oh, those people are always a fun bunch. Whether
Yeah.
we're talking about Christian literalists or Muslim literalists or Islam literalists, they're never fun to deal with. Those people, they're always just so rigid, and it's awful talking to them.
They're a modern. What's the word I'm looking for? Like a sect, I guess you could say. Like they're a new group. They didn't exist 250 years ago.
So what is their relation to a Wahhabist, and what's the difference, if any, and what is a Wahhabist?
Basically, Salafi is the word that they call themselves now. The word Wahhabi got a bad rap over time, and now they've basically started calling themselves Salafis. I mean, that's the long and the short of it. It's just a new adjective for the same group.
Gotcha.
Now, is this the literal? Not having read the Quran or knowing much about this. Ian's read it. I haven't read it. I've got better things to do than read religious text. But
I was in jail at the time. Had plenty of time.
You had some time. But it's nice to have people who do know the answers to these things. There, oftentimes we're confronted with callers that'll say things like, all Muslims are commanded by the Quran to kill off folks that don't believe like them. Now, they have to give you a chance. It's like touching base in tag or something like that. You have to have the opportunity to turn Muslim before they lop your head off or whatever. But they're lopping the heads off of lots of Muslims over there right now.
Will has never tried to kill me. In fact, he fed me during the Porcupine Freedom Festival.
Very well, too.
Yeah. Well, actually, there's a verse in the Quran that says that if it had been God's will, all men would have believed, every man on earth. Would you then compel men toward belief? So it asks the question, if it was God's will, this would already be. So what gives you the right to think that you can do this through force? Then you have La Ikra Fid Din, which is basically the calling card or the motto of Muslims for liberty. Let there be no coercion in Deen. And that was specifically revealed because a group of Muslim converts were trying to forcibly convert their children. These aren't like adults. These are like 10-year-olds who had grown up Christian, and the parents were trying to tell them that they had to now be Muslim. And because of that, the verse was revealed, let there be no coercion in Deen. So, and then you have another one, I think it's 60:8, that states that God has not told you can't be friendly with those who haven't tried to take your property or kill you because of your faith. That you should deal equitably with those people. So,
Will, hold your thoughts. I want to bring you back here. Can we have you for the rest of the hour if necessary?
You can have me as long as you like.
Awesome.
And you can take hard questions, right?
Yes, I imagine you can.
I used to give lectures on Islam to Tea Party groups. Right. I can take any question you want.
Perfect. 855-450 free. You got a question for a Muslim? We got one. It's Free Talk Live. So, Will Coley, welcome back to Free Talk Live. Thanks for being here.
Oh, glad to be here as always. Love talking with you guys.
Any other thoughts you want to just throw out there before we jump into folks and their phone calls?
Well, sure. Well, on your not every Muslim is a crazy person, I actually was doing a little bit of
You found out otherwise?
Yeah, well, to go along with some of Dobby's research on the authoritarian sociopathy that you guys have heard about. And the conservative estimates put that 4 to 5% of the global population of human beings are sociopaths. So that means that every group, Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, atheists, white people, black people, green people, brown people, 5% of your group are sociopaths.
Okay.
So basically it looks like the Muslims, our sociopaths, have found a way to organize. They've all found a way to meet each other and hang out with each other and, become friends and then spread their idiocy as far as it will reach.
Let's go to the phones here. We've got Jeff. He's on the line in Bowling Green, probably listening to WKCT. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, how's it going there?
Welcome,
I
sir.
have a question.
Go for
Under the Islamic religion, if I'm a Muslim and I'm speaking to a non-Muslim, is it okay for me to withhold the truth or lie to them because they are an infidel? And actually, whatever your answer is regarding this, it's going to be hard to believe you. So let me hear your response.
Boy, I wonder where that one came from. Go ahead, Will.
Sure. Actually, what I find really funny is that when I hear that question, I hear echoes of Salafis because, again, being in these debates, often you see Shia and Salafis debating with each other. And the same accusation that he just leveled against myself as a Muslim generally is the accusation that these people make against the Shia, that you can't trust anything a Shia says because they practice taqiyya and the Sunnis don't. So it actually makes me feel almost kind of hard to feel sorry for Sunni Muslims because I know that this is an accusation that they have leveled at Shiites for the last 1,000 years. So it's almost kind of like a karma,
So
if you believe in that
Is
sort
there
of
some
thing.
doctrine like this out there?
Well, the way that it is described in the Sunnah is that there was the first martyr of Islam was a woman. Her name was Sumayya. And her husband were both killed by the pagan Arabs because they refused to renounce their faith. Now, their son was tortured as well. And after his mother was murdered in front of him, and then his father succumbed to basically death, not in the midst of torture, but in the middle of the night after days and days of being tortured, they tortured the son, and the son renounced his faith under duress. And he was released. And when he went back to the Prophet ﷺ told him that he had not committed a sin because under duress, he had renounced his faith. He had told a lie. He was put in a position where if he didn't say, I'm not Muslim, they were going to either A, continue to torture him, or B, they were going to murder him. So when you're in that position, when you're in the position that you could lose your life for your faith, you have the right to preserve your life. You have the right to say, no, I'm not Muslim.
Now, I say things on the air similar to this, which is that for instance, if there's a man trying to rob you and you have money in two pockets, you give him the money out of one pocket, and he asks you if you have any more money, I would say that you are not wrong to say, no, I have no more money, to lie to a person that's stealing from you. In the same way that I feel that you're completely justified in lying on income tax forms because the government's stealing from you.
Yeah, right. Well, basically, it's an out for if Muslims are put in a position of an extreme duress where they're like under torture or they're being threatened with death. Now, the Shia see this as something that and it makes sense because they've been the marginalized and oppressed minority within the Muslim community. Where if you were Shia, there were certain Sunni leaders that would just murder. They would just kill you. You know, they were.
How could they trust you, right?
Exactly. They had programs to basically wipe out the Shia. So the Shia, they employed this quite often, whereas the Sunnis would state that death is better, to die for your faith is better than to renounce it under
But that's
duress.
a cultural thing that's grown up around Islam, not part of Islam.
No, it is a part of Islam.
But the ability to renounce is what I'm saying. The unwillingness to renounce your religion is a cultural thing that has grown up around Sunni Islam. It's not part of the actual Quran.
The doctrine, Sunni Islam does allow for you to renounce your faith if you're under duress.
Okay.
But they state that it's better for you to die for your faith. It's an allowance,
Gotcha.
like a dispensation. Like it's not what's best, but it's something that's allowed.
So how did that get transmuted into what Jeff said? And Jeff, by the way, is still with us here. How did that get transmuted into what Jeff said, which is, the idea that if you're a Muslim, then you can just lie any old time if it's convenient?
Purposeful misinformation. Basically,
there you go, Jeff. Any comments? I just want to give you a chance.
Taking something that's very simple and it's very straightforward in the text. The only time that it was ever practiced in the Sunnah is in the text. It says this man was tortured, and because he was tortured, he was given the right to renounce his faith. If you're under duress,
Got
you
it.
can renounce your faith.
Jeff,
I
your
can't
thoughts?
go
Let's
up
get-
to
let's
a-
take Jeff.
Yeah, it's kind of obvious to me that there's so many different interpretations that causes a problem. And the
No,
growth
it's
of
not a
Islam
multitude
seems
of
to take place.
interpretations. There's one interpretation. One
Why is
interpretation
there
is
so
that
many
under
factions that
duress,
fight
you
each
have
other?
the right to renounce your faith. Sunnis don't practice it as often as Shia do. Sunnis encourage that you die for your faith,
Got it.
but the interpretation is not different.
Will, stand by. Jeff, go ahead real quick.
Well, I just, the growth of Islam only takes place through fear and oppression.
Oh, I don't know if
of
that's
women
true at all.
and weak people.
Thank you for
I
the
mean,
call
if you-
tonight.
if
I'll
you
let
listen-
Will address that here in moments.
Well,
to
Will,
claim
you're
that-
a convert. Were you
Well, hang on.
oppressed?
We'll bring Will back here in just a moment. We'll talk about that. Jeff's claim is that Islam only grows through fear and oppression. And Will was not born into a Muslim family. We'll get a little more of his history coming up here in moments. We'll take your calls as well at 855-450-FREE. Hey, Will from Muslims for Liberty, just real quick before you get to the tough question here, our last caller threw out there about the growth of Islam. Is there any prohibition within Islam about using alternative currencies?
Not that I know of. Davi Barker, our assistant national director, actually wrote a very good article where he took one of the contemporary Islamic economic scholars, like one of the most well-known and renowned, took his rules for currency and applied them to Bitcoin to basically decipher whether or not Bitcoin would be something that would be an Islamically compliant currency. Compared to the American dollar, it's far more compliant because it's not based on debt and interest. It's based on its value. Its value is based on its value, whereas the value of the dollar is based on debt and interest. So
It's true. Every
It's
dollar
more
is actually
compliant.
evidence of debt. When they issue dollars, it's essentially creating debt from
yeah,
thin air.
exactly.
Well, it's called a
So-
note, just like a note
Right.
on your house. It's a Federal Reserve note.
Exactly, as opposed to what it used to be, which was a silver certificate. That's the difference between what it once was. You could turn it in and get silver back for it, and they stopped doing that a long time ago. So, Will, we're going to get back to more. There's more calls on the line for you here, and I appreciate your willingness to field these phone calls because I think that this information's so important. I think this is one of the most important issues of our time, alongside of immigration. I think that people coming to understand what a Muslim actually believes, or at least in some cases, you as a Muslim, because there's different belief systems.
Well, it's like
obviously.
saying what Christians believe. I
Right.
mean, there's so many denominations. You don't know what they believe.
Right. So it's good to get some information out there, and I appreciate that. So the allegation leveled at you was that, or at Islam, is that the growth of Islam, says our last caller, comes only through fear and oppression. Now, you weren't threatened into becoming a Muslim, were you?
I'd never met a Muslim before I was basically convinced after about 3 years of personal study that I was Muslim before I ever walked into a mosque or met a Muslim. I actually joke sometimes because the Muslim community, because of the just tons and tons of culture that comes along with it, that if I had hung out with Muslims for very much time before I became one, I probably wouldn't have, because Muslims are really hard, to deal with as far as the culture shock is concerned. When you're used to things being one way, and then they do things a completely different way.
What do you mean? Can you give me an example of what you mean when you're talking about this culture shock?
I used to run a Feed the Homeless program at the mosque that I first became Muslim in, and we would go out and buy boxes of juice boxes for giving out to the kids at the homeless shelters. And on Sunday school, they would have the Muslim Sunday school in the morning, and then we would go do the feed in the afternoon. And the Sunday school kids would raid the fridge and drink up all the juice boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to me, since it's been stated that those are for the homeless, that's an offense. That's something that you shouldn't do. But to them, it's juice, it's in the fridge, and it's in the mosque, so you can't get upset that the kids drank it. So, to me, it was like, no, we told the kids that it's not, so now they know it's stealing. And they're like, no, this is the masjid. If there's food here, then people have access to it. If you don't want them to get into it, you should keep it in the car. You know, like if it's in the building and it's in the fridge, then it's free game for any child here.
You're
You
right.
can't say they can't.
That would be difficult for me to accept.
Yeah, I couldn't wrap my head around it. You know, it bothered me, but it was a cultural thing that was completely different. You know, and I had to get used to.
So the
But
fear and the
for-
oppression thing, that didn't factor into you becoming a Muslim. And in fact, I think that a statement like that, the sort of across-the-board statement, Islam has only grown through fear and oppression, really just ignores the entire history of Islam. I mean, as I understand it,
two of the like Arab countries aren't 90 and 95% Muslim. You know, there's Christians and Jews and like different pagan groups like Zoroastrians and stuff that are mixed in with the population. Malaysia and Indonesia, on the other hand, are like 96% Muslim, and they were both converted through trade. Muslim traders came there. They were very honest, very trustworthy. They didn't cheat people, and the people saw that. They were impressed by it, and they wanted to.
Well,
be a
Islam
part
was also very progressive. I mean, you mentioned the pagans. There were a lot of, from what I read about it. I mean, it's not to say that back in the day, you know, in Muhammad's day, that women were treated equally as men, but the Muslim or the Islam actually, you know, advanced the position of women in society back then, as I understood it.
Well, rather than being property, women were now allowed to own property. Basically,
That's a pretty big step forward. But what about the
That's
Christians?
attractive. That's not force. That's not violence. Go ahead, Mark.
What about the Christians in, you know, plenty of Muslim countries that I hear news about are having a terrible time, getting tortured and a variety of things by the Islam there? I mean, are they nice? I mean, what's your reaction to that?
well, if you have Muslims in Muslim countries that are being disrespectful or spiteful or harmful in any way to the non-Muslims that live with them, according to the scholars, they're actually violating an oath that was given by Muhammad to non-Muslims. Like it's blameworthy to even utter, according to Al-Faruq, which is a book of Islamic jurisprudence written by a renowned scholar named Imam al-Qaddafi in the 12th century, and he's quoting another scholar, Ibn Hazm, who lived like just about 100 years after Muhammad died. To even utter a word of slander against their character is considered a blameworthy offense.
I want to bring Blue on the line here in Knoxville. Blue, you're on Free Talk Live with Will Coley from Muslims for Liberty. Go ahead, Blue.
Blue in Knoxville, I have to say one thing to you before you go.
Do you know Blue?
I don't know Blue, but I'm sure he saw that Tennessee-Kentucky game, and I bet he's as mad about it as I am.
It's actually a she, but go ahead, Blue. You're on with Will.
Football is grown men chasing a big skin. Doesn't impress me at all. So my question for you is, this was a question that was brought up on air in our local community. You know, being a layperson in regards to the Muslim faith, you know, we keep hearing when you die that you get 72 virgins, if you're a male. Well, the question was brought up, what do the women get?
Hopefully it's not a bunch of virgins, for God's sake.
Blue, thanks for the call tonight. We'll let Will field that coming up here in moments. You said you can stick with us, Will, so I appreciate that. We're going to keep you going here into hour number 2. And if you've got a question for a Muslim, we've got one. He's on the line. He's Will Coley from Muslims, the number 4, liberty.org. Go check out his website. And can you address the 72 virgins question here in a moment?
Yeah. It's you guys are going to laugh.
Okay, great. More with Will Coley. Your call's welcome. 855-450-FREE. It's Free Talk Live. We're going to continue with your calls and thoughts. And Will, thanks again for staying on with us here. You had a question right before we went to the news break there about the 72 virgins, and the question was, well,
how many virgins is it exactly? The number seems to keep changing.
Well, the question was, what about women? Do they get offered the 72 virgins? But I think we should also just address the issue of this claim of 72 virgins. Where does that come from?
It sounds spurious.
Where does that come from? Your thoughts?
It actually comes from a commentary, not from the Quran or any kind of a valid source. The numerical value. It was originally 70, and that changed later to 72. came from one specific scholar who, in his commentary, wrote that that's what it was. So basically, it's one scholar's idea.
And the idea is specifically that if you go on a suicide mission, you get 72 virgins. What were the parameters around that?
Oh, okay. Well, basically, there is. I'll give you the Quranic verses that are used usually to support this. Serving the believers. Now, this is not gender specific. It doesn't say, Muslima, or, there's no masculine or feminine language usage here, because there are masculine and feminine words in Arabic. It says, serving the believers will be immortal youths with jeweled and crystal cups filled with the purest wine, which will neither give them headache nor hangover.
Wait a second. I thought the Muslims didn't have anything to do with wine. They only get to drink wine in heaven?
Yeah.
Okay.
With fruits,
Sorry about that.
Meats of their desire, they will be fair ones with lovely intense eyes like guarded pearls, a reward for the good deeds of their past life. We have created mates for them and made them virgins, matched and aged for the companions of the right hand. Serving them will be immortal servants, and when you see them, they will look like scattered pearls. Now, all of these different verses, they're not gender specific. They don't state that men will get this or women will get this. Actually, in 225, 3:15, and 4:57, it states that they shall have perfected spouses as rewards for their deeds. And again, the word they is a non-gender specific. The believers, men and women alike, will have perfected mates or spouses as a reward for their deeds in their lives.
So the ladies do get hot, good-looking cabana boys in the afterlife with wine that doesn't give you headaches. Does the magic wine not make you do foolish things too? I'm just wondering about that.
Well, I would assume it wouldn't get you drunk, because intoxication is the problem with wine. Not
we call
wine
that
itself.
grape juice.
Yeah. But the whole 72 virgins thing originally came. There's a hadith that's ruled as da'if, which means that it has a questionable chain of narration, so it can't be applied in any legal sense or to back any opinion. And it states that where's it at? Here it is. The smallest reward each for the people of heaven, again non-gender specific, is an abode where there are 80,000 servants and 72 spouses, over which stands a dome decorated with pearls, aquamarine, and ruby, as wide as the distance from Damascus to Yemen.
This makes no sense. I mean, where are you going to get these, afterlife perfect spouses if they're not already Islamic? And if they are Islamic, then don't they get the 80 spouses too? Like, the math doesn't add up here.
It's heaven, Mark. The rules don't have to apply.
They're just
These are
angels.
These are perfect creations that have been touched by neither man nor jinn. They literally are created for heaven.
Okay.
Jinn is what? There's an angel?
No, that's like a demon.
Jinn's a demon. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Angel is an angel.
Gotcha.
Yeah, jinn is like a demon. But these are creations that were created specifically for heaven. But see, what a lot of people don't really talk about is the fact that when Muslim girls go out looking for a husband, they talk about wanting a husband that they can meet in Jannah and in heaven, that they can go and they can live their life with here and have such a great love that they marry each other in heaven and live together in heaven. So that's what men and women are looking for in this life, is a person that they can have as a spouse in the next life. Without the need for these servants and extra spouses.
I've got some more questions about women and Islam here in a moment, but let's go to Michael. He's in Virginia Beach, listening to WNIS. Michael, you're on with Will Coley from Muslims for Liberty.
Yes, Will. First of all, how do you spell your last name?
Coley.
Say that again?
Coley.
Oh, okay. In America, we have 50 states, and they are prevented from going to war with each other because we have a constitution and a Supreme Court with other federal courts underneath it to interpret that constitution. Why
Not very
doesn't
well lately.
why doesn't Will Colley take up a campaign contribution for his own organization to promote this idea among Muslim states, which are killing each other in the most barbaric ways because they simply can't agree on what their constitution, the Quran, actually says?
The Quran's not a
It's not a
constitution.
Yeah, the Quran's not a
Are they-
constitution. Yeah, Muhammad never stated that the Quran was a constitution either. There was a constitution actually in the time of the Prophet Muhammad that did exist. It was called the Compact of Medina. And basically what it was a contract between the Muslims, the Christians, the Jews, and the pagans that lived in Medina. And what it stated was that the Muslims would have Muslim courts and Muslim leaders for Muslims and Muslim rules for Muslims. And the Christians would have Christian courts and Christian leaders and Christian rules for Christians. And the Jews would have the same, and the pagans would have the same. And that if any outsider attacked any of the group inside, all the groups would fight in defense. That was the original, that was the Compact of Medina. And that's what we advocate at Muslims for Liberty, is a return to that kind of a system, because that was basically a voluntarist system where you had independent systems existing on top of each other without conflict. And that's what we encourage the Muslim world to return to.
I think we'd
But
like to encourage the entire world to go to an organization like that. I mean, that sounds like a great idea. But Michael, further
Until-
thoughts? Go ahead.
Until the
Yes,
nation
Hold on, Will.
Hang on, Will. Michael,
Okay.
go ahead.
I agree with you. We should all go to something like that, but let's just take this one step farther. We are hearing that these Muslim teachers that are called imams are issuing fatwas on the basis of their interpretation of what the Quran and the Hadith say about how life should be lived in society. And these fatwas actually call for the killing of people.
Michael,
So
we'll have Will address that. Thank you for the call tonight. The toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. Will Colley is with us from Muslims for Liberty. We'll talk about the fatwas here in a moment. The infighting as well. It's a big issue. It's Free Talk Live. But we've been taking some tough questions for you, Will. You're one of the founders of Muslims for Liberty. That's muslims4liberty.org. And you've been fielding some tough questions and some sort of, very common tough questions as well tonight. We've, addressed the allegation that Islam only grows through fear and oppression, which of course is just nonsense. And also the question of fatwas came up just a moment ago. What is a fatwa, and what are is there any truth to the claim that there are these Muslim imams out there, and what is an imam, who are issuing these things that are demanding people die? Go ahead.
fatwa is just an opinion. I mean, in a legal sense, it doesn't really hold any legal sway if you don't follow that scholar, so to speak.
Mhm.
Like, a scholar in Syria would not be, under classical understandings of Islamic jurisprudence, a scholar in Syria would not be able to give a juristic opinion for a Muslim living in Malaysia, because they live in Syria, they understand the culture in Syria, they understand what happens in Syria, and they have no understanding of Malaysia. So a scholar in Malaysia could give legal opinions for Malaysians because he understands their culture, he understands, the way Malaysians are. So if you have that's one of the big issues that we have in America, is that we have a very small group of American scholars, Hamza Yusuf, Sahib Webb, Zaid Shakur, Yasser Qadhi, but that are born in America, raised in America, have an understanding of what it's like to be an American. So a lot of our scholarship is being imported. So you have Muslims from Saudi Arabia trying to tell Muslims in America how to be Muslims in America when they don't have any understanding of that. You know, like they're walking around the literally, I kid you not, this actually happened. Walking around the airport blindfolded because they didn't want to see the advertisements where girls weren't dressed properly. Okay, I'm sorry, brother, but this is not Saudi. You know, you're going to have to we can't hire somebody to walk and hold you by the hand while you go everywhere because there are billboards that you might not like. And that's what I'm talking about. You know, like for Sahib Webb, he would just be like, that's ridiculous. But
So
for this guy from Saudi Arabia, it's completely necessary to him because that's what he thinks is appropriate.
When you call it a legal opinion, this is what I'm curious on. Is my understanding is that Sharia law has nothing to do with Islam. It's a cultural thing. In the same way that saying English common law is Christian is erroneous, saying Sharia law is Islamic is erroneous.
No, that's not true.
Okay.
No.
Does the Quran talk about Sharia law?
No, the Quran doesn't specifically talk about Sharia. What Sharia entails mostly, about probably 70 to 80%, is religious ritual, like how to wash properly, how to pray, like a difference in opinions. You know, they call it an ikhtilaf, a difference in opinion between like Maliki Sharia and Hanafi Sharia is that the Malikis pray what they call sadl, which is with their hands to their side, and Hanafis pray with their hands crossed above the navel.
Well, that's worthy of killing somebody over, I hope.
You know, I mean, you can't be Muslim and not be practicing Sharia in some way.
Okay.
It talks about how to get married, how to look for a wife, how to wash yourself properly, how to properly bathe before you pray, how to pray properly, all of these, how to fast properly, all of these things are encompassed within Sharia. And there are different opinions on all of these things depending on the school that you follow. Like I follow Maliki school, but I study the other three schools for an understanding on that kind of thing.
Well, now, I thought that all you had to do to be Islam is believe in Judgment Day, the afterlife, and the Prophet or something.
Well, what the Prophet ﷺ says is that if you state that you believe in the last day and you believe in the oneness of God and the day of judgment and all of these things, then if you say La ilaha illallah, then you're a Muslim. Yes, that's true. But when you're a Muslim, when you go pray, you're practicing Sharia. When you wash yourself to pray, you're practicing Sharia.
Okay.
When you raise your children, you're practicing Sharia. When you pray,
Hi, Nanny.
there's a child right there.
There you go.
when you pray for protection before you leave your home when you go on a trip, you're practicing Sharia. So there are legal parts of it. Yeah, there are legal parts of it. But what most people don't realize and what's not practiced in modern Muslim countries is that the legal portion of Islam and the state itself are supposed to be separate. The judges, the entire legal system is supposed to be an independent private body that the state has nothing to do with. They don't arrest people for the courts. The only thing that the state could do is they can carry out punishment on behalf of the victim with permission of the victim.
So are there imams, and is an imam a scholar? I didn't really get that clear.
No.
What is an imam?
An imam, literally what the word imam means, is the person who leads the prayer. So like my kid could be the imam.
I see. So it could be true that an imam somewhere in the world, or more than one of them, has issued some sort of violent legal opinion.
No preacher's ever done that.
No, I've read them, but there's also one that just came out that was signed by 128 scholars against ISIS and against violence.
We'll come back with more here in moments.
Never hear about that.
With Will Cawley, Free Talk Live. So we continue here. Will Cawley is with us. Muslims for Liberty, the organization he's involved with, Muslims and number 4, liberty.org. And Will, can you drink coffee as a Muslim? I know that there's prohibitions on intoxication. Does that include caffeine?
We kind of invented coffee.
Really?
Yeah, that's one of those things that there was this big campaign called Muslim Apologies, and basically it was Muslims who are they have what I call like condemnation fatigue, where like every time somebody does something stupid or says something stupid, every Muslim in America is automatically called on by every person they know, their coworkers, their friends, and like, what do you think of this? I want you to say that you think this is bad. I want to hear you say it. It's like, well, did you hear me say it the last like 6 weeks ago when something happened? Like my opinion didn't suddenly change. So there was a thing started called Muslim apologies. It was a hashtag. So people were like, sorry about modern surgical tools, hashtag Muslim apologies, or sorry about the presumption of innocence, hashtag Muslim apologies, or
And these are all
sorry,
things that you're
sorry
claiming that
about coffee.
Muslims brought to the modern world.
Yeah. Someone who was Muslim developed Averroes developed not Averroes, Avicenna developed most modern surgical tools. Like 60% of the tools that he developed in the 12th century are still used today, just modified versions of them.
All right. So what is the rule then? I mean, because if there's a prohibition against intoxication, how is it that caffeine doesn't measure up to that?
It's not seen as it doesn't affect the intellect or the ability to use the intellect.
No, Mark gets pretty crazy when he drinks caffeine here.
Depends on the person.
What'd you say, Mark?
Depends on the person.
Depends on the person. Okay.
Right.
All right. So, hey, other
fatwa
issues.
thing.
So-
The fatwa thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to actually touch on that.
Sure.
Was the longest fatwa that I ever read in my whole life was over 660 pages. It was
Oh my.
3 years of research by a Pakistani scholar of Islamic jurisprudence, and it was a fatwa against Islamic extremism, against terrorism, the targeting of civilians with violence, all of that. 660 pages, 3 years worth of research to make sure that it was perfect, on point, and irrefutable. Or you can Google up a quick fatwa on, like 11 different websites, and they'll give you like 3 paragraphs of their personal opinion. So you see the difference in fatwa versus fatwa. You have the one that's researched by a scholar who's spent 40 or 30 years of his life studying this subject, and then spent 3 years just making sure that everything was perfect in his one legal opinion that he wrote. Or you've got a website that you can run to, and they'll churn you out like 3 paragraphs in a few hours when you ask them a question, like
Gotcha.
a forum. Like this is the difference in the level of credibility in the fatwas that are
Sure.
floating around out there.
Everybody's got an opinion, and so what you're saying is
Yeah.
a fatwa is just the opinion of somebody who's leading some sort of.
Well, it's supposed to be the opinion of a person who is qualified to have one, but that's not what happens anymore. We have what we call Google sheikhs. That they're wannabe scholars. They're just loudmouths with the ability to use Google, who decide that they're now scholars.
What about the infighting? Because just to come back around to something that I think deserves further discussion, one of the common claims is that, well, and the earlier caller kind of addressed this to some extent. Well, Muslims are fighting constantly in the Middle East, and the Christians don't do that in the United States. So what's wrong with these people?
Well, the concept of the nation state is part of the problem. Previous to World War I, there were none of these artificial borders. The Kurds had their own area, but it wasn't split up between 4, quote, sovereign nations. So each group had their own place. Like Iraq is Kurds in the north, Sunnis in the center, and Shia in the south. And these are cultures that have never really gotten along with each other before they were Muslim. So it doesn't really make sense that they would get along afterward.
Yeah, it's
And
kind of ludicrous that
Yeah.
white people, or foreigners come in, draw straight lines on maps, say this, you're a country now, get
Yeah.
along, and that then, decades later, condemn the people inside those straight lines for not
Yeah.
getting along because, hey, we get along fine here. Well, the national borders of the United States have changed over time, and there's been a great deal of conflict with over those borders
In the past, certainly.
in the past. And so because the Ottoman Empire kept the populace essentially in check up until this century, there's been a lot of churn, a lot of problems.
Well, look, the Shia in southern Iraq have always been a part of the community of Shia in central and northern Iran. They were that was their group. And then they split that up between two countries and left the Jews and the Sunnis who lived in southern Iran. Um, well, what about their community? Like, well, now we're stuck in these borders, and part of our community is across another border now.
Mm.
So, and of course, that created tension between the borders because you've got groups on either side that want to be together that are being artificially kept apart, and rulers who have been put in power by Western countries wanting to hold and maintain the control that they have over these imaginary lines that didn't exist, 100 years ago.
Another question I have for you.
That's part of what has been creating what's going on in a lot of this conflict that we see over there now.
The existence, the idea of nation states is what's leading to a lot of this infighting. That makes
Especially
sense.
when they
Well,
haven't
it's an
grown up
anathema.
organically.
It's an anathema in Islam. Nationalism is actually seen on the same level as like killing people. The Prophet ﷺ said that God views the person who would fight, die, or advocate for nationalism as lower than the beetle who digs through dung.
Yeah, it's interesting. You don't often see the when you see Islamic warriors, they'll have just some Arabic letters on a flag. They don't actually have a flag, so it's kind of sticks to that idea. And many Christians have similar thoughts. The Jehovah's Witnesses, the Amish, the Mennonites, Quakers. Many of these have no, they don't believe really sort of in saying the pledge and all this nationalistic stuff.
We'll come back with more here. If you've got a question for Will Cauley, we'll keep him on for one more segment. Get your question in now. 855-450-3733. You may take control here of Free Talk Live. More coming up. Listening in Aberdeen, Washington to KBKW. Hello, Alan. You're on with Will Cauley from Muslims for Liberty.
Well, thank you.
Hello.
Go for it. You're on.
I'm really kind of appalled at your guest and his approach to this. It seems like all the good Muslims are always asking for forgiveness for their religion, but they never condone the acts that turn the stomachs of the rest of the world. And I can't understand why there isn't a Muslim army that is out there taking these people out. If their religion is so good, but and I'll say one last thing and then I'll get an answer. Through history, it's always been the Christians against the Muslims. And, I have never seen a Christian that cut anybody's head off.
Well, okay. I've seen Christians bombing people to death over in the Middle East as part of the U.S. military. But that aside, I'd like to have Will answer your concern here tonight, because maybe you weren't tuned in, Alan, when he earlier pointed out that he thought that this guy in Oklahoma was a sociopath and basically a nut job. But go ahead, Will. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
You can't. And I can't put him in yours or his, but I think this is totally ridiculous. This is a worldwide fight for the world.
Have you been listening at all to the show tonight? I mean, thus far, it seems to me like he's already condemned violence multiple times. Go ahead, Will. Go ahead.
Hold on one second. Let me answer what seems to be the main gist of his question is, where is the Muslim army that's fighting these people? And they're in Syria and in northern Iraq. Most people know them as the Kurds. And they have a literal military that has been fighting against these people ever since they started the invasion of Iraq. When Obama dropped his bombs to quote unquote help the Christians and Yazidis off the mountain, the truth of the matter is that Kurdish Muslims had already gotten those people almost all the way to the border of Syria before the bombs of the United States ever fell. So, where's the Muslim army? Well, they're there on the ground fighting with guns. The community in Nashville, the Nashville Kurdish community, raised around $126,000 to send to the Christian and Yazidi refugees who are staying with their family members, basically. These are people that are Kurdish refugees from Iraq who still have family there that are on the ground that are fighting against, these crazy people in Iraq and in Syria right now. So where's the Muslim army? It's right there. They just don't call them that. Like when the female fighter pilot from the UAE, they call her that. They don't say female Muslim fighter pilot from the UAE. Her faith isn't an issue unless she's bombing,
Right.
the wrong people, basically.
She's doing the wrong thing. She's a Muslim.
If she wasn't bombing the people that we wanted her to bomb, then she would be Muslim. But since she is bombing the people that we wanted her to bomb, she's just a woman from the UAE. And it's the same thing with the Kurds. They never say Kurdish Muslim militia. The Kurdish community is 96% Muslim. So if there's Kurds fighting, they're Muslims. But they never ever define them as that. So it seems to be a carefully crafted media that if a Muslim is bombing someone that the state doesn't say it's okay, then they're Muslim. But if it is someone that the state says that it's okay, then their faith is never even acknowledged.
Alan, thanks for your call tonight. Appreciate it. Mark, did you have a comment?
Well, it seems to me that there's a lot of confusion and chaos going on in the Middle East, and that has to do many Americans don't know history. They don't know that Western countries at the end of World War I came in and drew a bunch of straight lines on maps. And whenever you see straight lines in the world, you often see problems because you're taking tribes and cultures and you're shoving them together and saying, hey, live together, otherwise you're uncivilized heathens. If some powerful Muslim country decided that it was a good idea to fly drones over the United States to help us with our crime problem, it's going to throw the whole country into chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that and I try to avoid like more kind of somewhat moral relativist arguments, but that's the truth. Is if we were put in the same position here in the U.S. to have Mexico allow China to build a drone base so that they could bomb Texas, we would be all like people from Tennessee would be on the border of Texas with their rifles right now. I know I'd probably be there and half my cousins would be too. But we don't look at it that way. We don't see that part of it. And I think a lot of it's because it's not happening here. So we have no real connection to it. And with the drone war, we're not losing soldiers. It's not Vietnam. We don't have 10,000 deaths a week. So the populace just doesn't really understand the cost of war because the cost of war now is mainly financial.
Isn't this whole Christians? The caller also mentioned Christians versus Muslims, that this is the narrative, basically. And
I'm not looking for that narrative.
Ridiculous. I mean, isn't that just ridiculous? Not only today, because obviously, as I pointed out before, if that were true, then we'd have a lot more violence here in the U.S. than is actually happening. But secondly, back in Muhammad's time, they weren't out to convert or kill Christians. My reading of the Quran and understanding of that history was that the Muslims just had a fundamental difference in how they viewed God. That Muslims see God as this unity, this one thing, and Christians see it as this triune thing. And that's just one of the.
But that's going on in Christianity too. The Trinitarian and the Unitarian.
But there wasn't any proclamation that they must convert them. In fact, as I understood it, they kind of let them each other be. Am I misunderstanding that?
Well, the oldest Christian communities on earth are in lands that have been predominantly Muslim for 1,400 years. So if it was a there are certain Christian groups that exist nowhere except for the Arab lands, like Maronite Christians or Chaldean Catholics, or these are groups that they did at one time live in Europe, but they fled to Muslim lands, fleeing from the Roman Church because they were an unorthodox group according to the Romans, and therefore expendable and exterminatable. And they fled and have lived in predominantly majority Muslim areas since then. Then you have the Christian community at Damascus, and a really interesting story just to cover.
Hold on, before you get into that story, I'd said one more segment, but now we got a bunch more calls for you. Do you want to stick with us?
I'm whatever makes you guys happy.
I appreciate it. I think this is important stuff to cover here. Okay, so good story. Go ahead.
Well, like there was an Umayyad king, and he took the church of the Damascus from the Christians in Damascus. And then two caliphs later, there was another caliph named Omar ibn Abdul Aziz. And the way the story is stated is that the Christians in Syria knew him to be a righteous man who followed his faith rather than seeking wealth and power. And they went to him to tell him that his great grandfather basically had taken their church without he had usurped their rights and taken their church by force. So when that happened, Omar ibn Abdul Aziz told the governor in Syria to speak with the church community and offer them one of two options. That since the church had been built onto since the Muslims took it over, they could have the church back, or they could have money from the treasury to build a new church because an injustice had been done to them.
We'll come back with more here with Will Coley. He's one of the founders, the folks over at Muslims for Liberty. Muslims, the number 4 Liberty, graciously hanging out with us here, answering your tough questions. If you got them, dial in toll free at 855-450-FREE.
We were talking like right before the break about the divisions, right? And I guess a good analogy would be like the Sunni Shia split. I would see similar to like the Catholic Protestant split. Like,
but it happened a lot earlier.
Yeah. Well, instead of taking 1,000 years, it took, like
50.
4.
Yeah, it was something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. No. It only took a few years.
Okay.
As soon as Ali took the throne, the Kharijites decided he was invalid, and the next thing you know, there's a civil war going on. So we're talking like within 20 years, this split happened. But I would compare it to that, and just like you see like violence popping up again in Northern Ireland between Protestants and Catholics in the last couple of months. It's the same kind of thing. Like you've got one group that is the majority who is trying to enforce their will on the minority. And they want to use either the violence of personal violence or the violence of the state to do that.
Now, in the case of being a Muslim, this is not, as I understand it from my research, I've read the Quran, I have done some reading about Muhammad's life and some of the things that happened. He did not in any way actually advocate for aggressive violence, as I understand it. He did support defense, like you can defend yourself with violence if someone attacks you. But what I understood was that his teachings were that if someone attacks you, but then they withdraw, that you are not supposed to come back at them at that point. Like if somebody's attacking your village or whatever and they stop and they withdraw, you're not supposed to counterattack. Isn't that true?
Yeah. Actually, there's a favorite verse that it's like 2 verses that the anti-Muslim types, they love to quote them. But what they do is they remove like the verse at the beginning and like 3 verses after. The one that's usually quoted is chapter 2, verse number 191 through 193. But they leave off the part that you're actually talking about, which is after that and the part before. So if you start at chapter 2, verse number 190, it says, "Fight in the way of God those who fight you, but do not transgress. Indeed, God does not like those who transgress. And kill them wherever you overtake them, and expel them from wherever they have expelled you. For fitna is worse than killing." Oppression, oppression, people turning you out from your property, taking your home from you, attempting to take your life, is worse than killing them in return, to defend yourself. Such is the recompense of the disbeliever. And if they cease, then indeed God is forgiving and merciful. Fight them until there is no more oppression, or until worship is acknowledged to be for God. But if they cease, then there is to be no aggression except for against oppressors. Fighting in the sacred month is for aggression committed in the sacred month, and for all violations is legal retribution. So whoever has assaulted you, then assault him in the same way that he has assaulted you. Fear God and know that he is with those who fear him.
Okay.
So you see that it's fight those who have harmed you.
But at the same time, if they're not actively harming, if they retreat, Yeah,
that's what it says. But
Right.
if they cease, then let there be no aggression except for those who commit oppression. So if there are still if you've got an army that you're fighting against and the army goes away and like 15 members decide that they still want to rape, pillage, and burn, then continue to fight those people.
Got it.
Thanks for clearing
Yeah.
that up. I think that's one of the most misunderstood passages or tenets, if you will, of
Well, the
Islam.
problem is they take 191 through 193, but they don't put the part at the beginning that says that this violence that's discussed in 191 through 193 is only for those who have attacked you first.
Let's go to your calls and thoughts for Will Cawley, one of the folks behind Muslims for Liberty. We've got, I think Tyler is in Lynchburg listening to WLNI. Hey, Tyler.
Hi.
Hey, you're on
How are
with
you
Will.
doing, Will?
Howdy.
I just have a really quick and actually very specific question for you, and it's kind of funny because you actually did just quote some scripture, but really quick, I just want to quote the first part of Quran 9:29 and then Quran 9:5. I'm only leaving out the last part because it's not really relevant. You can add it if you want, but I don't want to take up too much time. So Quran 9:29 states, "Fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day." And then Quran 9:5 states, so when the sacred months have passed away, then slay the idolaters wherever you find them, and take them captive and besiege them and lie in wait for them in every ambush. Then if they repent and keep up prayer and pay the poor rate, leave their way free to them. So my question for you after reading that text is there any way that you could construe that where a strict reading of that passage does not condone the killing of, at the very least, the idolaters, and at the worst case scenario, the infidel?
Thanks for the call, Tyler. I appreciate hearing from you. Go ahead, Will.
Now you're on the hot seat, mister.
That's actually, I mean, honestly, that was a very well worded question. Again, it's the same thing that happens with the verses that I was talking about earlier, is that you have to read from the first verse in the chapter. You can't say, well, 9:29 says this one line and 9:5 says this, and but ignore
Jesus
all
said
the
he
rest.
didn't come to bring peace, but to bring a sword.
Yeah, well,
but what the hell does that mean? Because we didn't read the rest of it.
Exactly. You have to read the whole chapter. Now, if you start at the first verse, it says that this is a declaration of disassociation of God and his messengers to those which you have made a treaty among the polytheists. Now, the reason for this was there was a religious pilgrimage that was headed to Mecca, and they were attacked by a tribe. These are unarmed religious pilgrims. They're literally like, hair is cut, they have no weapons, they're not even allowed to wear perfume. They have nothing but a piece of white cloth wrapped around them and a belt and the sandals that they have on their feet. And a tribe attacked them. And the prophet went to the Meccans and said, look, this people from your group violated the treaty and murdered these religious pilgrims. You need to do something about this and discipline them. And the Meccans said, no, we told them to do it. You know, go piss up a rope. So because of that breaking of the treaty, God says the treaty is null and void now. 9:2. So travel freely throughout the land during the 4 months, but know that you cannot cause failure to God and that God will disgrace you. And it is in an announcement from God and his messenger to the people on the day of the pilgrimage that God has disassociated from the disbelievers, and so is his messenger. If you repent, then that is best for you. But if you turn away, then know that you will not cause failure to God, and give glad tidings to those, excuse me, and give tidings to those of a painful punishment. Accepted are those, see, this is 9:4. Accepted are those with whom you have made a treaty among the polytheists, and they have not been deficient toward you in anything, or supported anyone in violence against you.
What does that mean? Translate
well,
that. I
essentially,
got
these
lost.
people killed some of their friends, and it was a declaration of war.
Well, yeah, there was a treaty, and basically what it said is the people that broke the treaty, In the first three, you can have the right to attack them.
Now, Will, you were explaining it's always difficult when somebody starts reading scripture because it can get a little dry. It can be hard to handle, and I don't want this to be a Quran study session necessarily, so I want to be aware of that. But you were trying to make a point about context and surrounding sort of the claims that, well, here's some what are they called in the Quran? The verses?
Oh, ayah.
Ayah? Surrounding some of the ayahs that suggest violence, but you're saying you got to take that into context, and you were in the middle of explaining it. You got cut off by our break.
Well, I'm actually glad that he brought this verse up. I actually had this already open because I expected to get this one because it's one that's used quite often. Basically, 9:5, which is one of the verses that he cited, says, "Kill the polytheists wherever you find them." I mean, that's an edited version. It continues on. But 9:4 says, "Except for the ones who have not harmed you or assisted others in harming you." So for you to say that 9:5 is an open advocation of killing anyone that's not Muslim, you'd have to ignore 9:4. And if you read 9:7, it says, "How can there be a treaty in the sight of God and his messenger except for those with whom you made a treaty? So long as they are upright toward you, be upright toward them."
Now, doesn't that contradict? I mean, don't those statements though contradict the statement that we talked about earlier, where the idea is that if somebody stops their attack on you as a Muslim, that you are not allowed to counterattack on those people. You're supposed to let them go their way and call it a day, basically. But there, it sounds like it's saying, well, if someone's broken a treaty, then you can just go ahead and slaughter them.
Well, no, if they've committed an act of violence against you, you have the right to commit violence against them in return as in defense.
Isn't it true, though, that Muhammad didn't actually do that? In at least I remember one story where there was some crazy psychopath who was killing people and was trying to attack Muhammad, and he forgave him.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of personal instances where that happened, but as far as like the Battle of Hudaybiyah or the Battle of Badr Well or the Battle of Mecca, the three major military battles, those happened. The first two were because of invasions. The Meccans invaded Medina, and the Prophet and his companions and the people of Medina, Christians, Jews, Muslims, everybody, well, except for Badr, went out and met them on the battlefield and fought in defense. The last battle, the Battle of Mecca, was more of an offensive defensive battle where religious pilgrims were slaughtered, and the Muslims they violated the treaty, and the Muslims were like, okay, well, you're going to continue to do this. It was the Meccans made it clear that this wasn't something that was going to stop.
So by the Quran, it's okay to attack back somebody who has broken a treaty, but not necessarily the case.
Only up to the point that they broke the treaty, though.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if they didn't kill people on your side, then you have no right to react in a military fashion. If they didn't turn people out of their homes, they didn't usurp the rights of people, then there's no clearance for military action.
But even though it may have been okay by the Quran, Muhammad himself had forgiven some attackers in the past.
Many attackers. Yeah. There's stories of him actually having an assassin walking behind him, and he turns around and like forgives him for the fact that he's there to assassinate him, even though he's never said that he's got a knife hidden and that's why he's there. Like forgives his assassin. He puts his hand on his heart and he's like, I know what is troubling you and I forgive you. So I mean, and that's what's always stated, is that retribution is allowed, but forgiveness is always what's better.
I like that. Let's go to David. Your questions for our Muslim friend Will Cawley from Muslims for Liberty. David is in Anniston, Alabama. And David, you're on Free Talk Live with Will.
Yeah. Good evening.
Hey, go ahead.
Yeah, like Christ had no authority for his gospel from God. The Muhammad, where does it say he got his authority from, and when, or who did he get it from?
Thanks for the call, David. Appreciate hearing from you. Go ahead, Will.
Well, the story goes that the first time he received revelation from the angel Gabriel, the same angel that appeared to Mary and told her the news that Jesus was going to be born, he went to a Christian scholar named Waraka, and basically told him like, look, this is what this angel has told to me. I'm afraid that I'm crazy, or maybe it's the devil. Like, I don't know. I'm in fear though. And when he described to Waraka, this Christian monk, what was being told to him, the Christian monk told him, what is coming to you is from God, and you're that messenger, or that prophet, which is described in biblical tradition. So he told him like, look, this is from God. And then later on, the angel Gabriel appeared to him again, but the what's the word? The authority came from God. Some Islamic apologists actually say that there's a verse in the Bible where Jesus talks about the one who will come later, who will speak, what God tells him to say. And that's who Muhammad is that God, that it was a revelation that God told him, and then he told the people. And
I mean, essentially, the Quran is like an update. I mean, basically, as I understood it, that God sent this angel down.
That's the idea,
right? To correct some misinformation about what the word was in the Bible at that point. Like, oh no, it's not a three God, it's a one God kind of thing. It was one of the
well, I mean, the Quran even says like, your God. Tell those people of the book, the Christians and Jews, your God and our God are one.
Right. Hey, we're going to come back with more. We got Will Cawley, and if you've got questions, people do. They're on the line waiting patiently here. We'll get to you. 855-450-3733. Got a question for a Muslim? We got one right here. It's Free Talk Live. With Will Cawley, who is on the line and has been throughout the whole show graciously from his home in Tennessee, from Muslims for Liberty. And Will, I want to get to some more calls here, so let's jump back into it. We've got Jose in Grand Rapids listening to WTKG. Jose, you're on with Will.
And I just discovered your show a couple of weeks ago, and I really congratulate you for such a great show. I mean, you
Thanks.
guys give it the time for topic discussion, and thank you for taking my call.
Sure, go for it.
I have two quick questions and a longer little comment. One is, I want to, if no one has asked, because I was in transition between the radios, if what is the gentleman's affiliation, Sunni or Shia? And secondly, what is his conception of liberty?
Good question.
I wish him the best. I think the problem is that he has a very good, strong foundation in American constitutionalism experience, which I don't think is the experience of Islam from its birth. There's no denial involved in admitting that. I mean, we cannot deny that Muhammad was not just a religious figure, but he was also a general. And however we cut it, there are the questions of his imposition of the religion. Secondly, the Constitution of Medina, and I have it right in front of me, it's really not a constitution in the sense that we conceive a constitution to be in the West. I hope, and I wish your host really the best. I think that he's onto something, and I hope that he can succeed. But I do not believe that it is possible for a religion that philosophically has a problem with reason in the way that we understand the logos coming from the side of Christianity, which led to international law, led to all kinds of promulgation, all with all the problems that the West had between religion and the church and state. It was still able to formulate an engagement with reason.
Jose, I want to thank you for the comment and the questions. I'm going to let Will answer them, and thank you for the call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. Will, your thoughts on the alleged Constitution of Medina? I'm not familiar with it.
Oh, it was just a set of contracts between tribal peoples that stated that they wouldn't attack each other, and that if anyone attacked them, they would all defend each other, basically.
Are you Sunni or Shiite?
Most people would depends on who you ask. Like if I'm debating a Salafi, then they call me a Sufi or they call me a Shia. If I'm debating against a Shia, they call me a Salafi. I'm Muslim. I study Maliki jurisprudence, which is considered a Sunni school of Islam. but I personally try to avoid all of those kinds of artificial labels that are there.
His other question was, what about your conception of liberty? What does that mean to you?
Well, I was led to voluntarism by my study of Islamic jurisprudence. Like, I was a politically apathetic person who wasn't particularly liberty-minded until I started studying Islamic jurisprudence. And the more I studied, the closer I slid into like a free market, voluntarist, anarchist sort of viewpoint on life. And
Davi Barker wrote a book about this called Voluntary Islam, and I read that book, and it was excellent. He goes into some of the history of Islam and looks at how voluntarist it actually was, how consensual or consent-oriented that it was.
Liberty, as we understand it here in the West, is something that was created by sort of the Enlightenment period. And
the father, most sociologists and historians credit Averroes as being the father of the Enlightenment, but Averroes isn't his name. His name is Ibn Rushd. He's Muslim. That's the reason why in that great painting with all the great philosophers and scientific minds, there's one Muslim guy over on the side, Ibn Rushd, is because most sociologists and historians see him as the father of the Enlightenment, because he was the bridge between Greek Aristotelian philosophy and the European Western world. He was the person that Aristotelian philosophy went through before it got to Western culture. So, John Locke openly expressed that Ibn Tufayl was very influential on his concept of natural rights. His book Hayib ibn Yaqzan, which later became the Philosophicus Autodacticus. These are Muslim philosophers from the 12th and 11th and 13th centuries who had an immense amount of influence on Western Enlightenment thinkers. When John Locke talks about the right to life, liberty, and estate, I hear Sharia, because there are 5 natural rights and goals of law in Sharia: the protection of life, the protection of faith, the protection of the intellect, the protection of family, and the protection of property.
Boy, that just sounds horrifying. We can't have anything to do with that.
And Sharia gave it to women, which was something that wasn't done up to that point.
Right. Which is what? Right.
It actually there's a statement of Muhammad where he says, that if you die, if someone tries to rob your house and you die in defense of your property, that you're seen on the same level as a martyr who was murdered on behalf of the faith. So I mean, to protect one's property is literally like a religious compulsion. The right of like, you couldn't be a Muslim communist because private property and the right to private property is sacrosanct. It's actually like it's the 5th maqasid in the foundations of Sharia. Is the protection of your right to protect your property.
Let's go to continue with your calls for Will Cawley from Muslims for Liberty. Derek is in Indianapolis. Derek, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hoosier.
Hey, guys. Just a quick question for you there, Will. I know some people that have kind of advocated for reading the Quran, and obviously that's one of the best ways to determine for yourself about a specific religion is to read up on it yourself. I'm just wondering if you have like a specific translation that you would recommend, or are they all kind of generally okay? Because I've been to several bookstores and you just see multiple translations.
Anything that comes from Saudi Arabia, throw it in the don't throw it, burn it, because that's the Islam. I mean, seriously, that's the Islamically compliant way to dispose of a Quran, is to burn it and then put the ashes in moving water. If it comes from Saudi Arabia, you don't want to read it. PBS, it's so bad that PBS actually did a documentary called Inside the Quran, where they pointed out all the purposeful mistranslation. I would go with a Muhammad Asad translation personally, because it has a great commentary by a renowned scholar, and it has one of the best English translations that I've found.
Muhammad Asad?
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
A-S-A-D.
Derek, thanks for the call tonight. We're going to continue here in moments. Your calls, 855-450-FREE. It's Free Talk Live. from Muslims for Liberty, Will Cawley. Thanks for sticking with us basically for the entire show. It's been a long time since we've had a guest on for the entirety of Free Talk Live, but the calls just kept coming in. Great questions for you. I had just kind of a question about women, being a woman and a Muslim. And we touched on the idea earlier, is my understanding from studying Islam to some extent, that Islam was progressive for women, compared to the idolaters and the pagans that came before the Muslims. They advanced the rights of women, but still today, you'll see women wearing burqas, and you'll hear a lot of negativity from people, rumors about how women aren't equal. Just comments in general about being.
I don't know if
a
it's
woman.
just rumors. I mean, certainly plenty of places. And,
Yeah, it's not just rumors. It's true. It's happening. There's actually this gives me an opportunity to kind of go into something that I was hoping to cover before we closed out. Is don't listen to me. I'm just a student. Don't believe a word that I say, but do take the time to listen to some of the actual scholars that do exist out there. And one of them is Habib Ali, Habibali, and he's giving a speech to a Muslim audience as a Muslim, and they're there because they want to learn from him as a scholar. And he acknowledges it. He says, we have family members raping family members. We have wives being oppressed by their husbands. And we have religious authorities upholding this and trying to state that their culture is a part of our religion. And I mean, he gets very upset. And you can see that he's noticeably upset. Because it's a reality. It is something that's happening. But when you go and you see these speakers and they talk about these things, they state that the commentaries by the people who knew Muhammad personally, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, were that basically men and women have the same rights, and that the way the Quran says it is that men and women have the same rights, and men are at 1 degree above women. And when the companion of Muhammad, Ibn Abbas, wrote his commentary about the Quran, he stated that degree is that men are required to basically not get upset if a woman doesn't fulfill all of her rights to him because of the fact she has difficulty. Nask is the word that's used, difficulty in her condition. And the examples that are given are pregnancy, menstrual period, child rearing, breastfeeding. Because women have all of these things that they're doing, if you come home and dinner ain't ready, shut up and make it yourself, because the Prophet ﷺ did, so you're no better. Well,
I'm glad to see Muhammad didn't have any better than I do.
Well, yeah, the Hadith traditions actually state that Muhammad cooked his own food, mended his own sandals, washed his own laundry, and helped his wife sweep the house.
I hope she had a good paycheck.
Yeah. But don't listen to me. Go out and listen to some of these scholars. Hamza Yusuf does a great lecture on women in Sharia. He's giving it to a Muslim audience as a Muslim, and these people are there wanting to learn about this. Mokhtar Magawi, Mokhtar. Just put that in and then put an M, and his name will pop right up. He's the foremost scholar on Shafi'i legal theory in the world right now. And he does 2 amazing lectures on Sharia law. He covers everything you'd ever want to hear about, from the death penalty to like the cutting of hands to apostasy to adultery. Like, he literally covers all the hot button issues.
Can you do me a favor? Can you do me a favor and send me a link to that, and then I'll repost it on the Free Talk Live Facebook, Google Plus, Twitter, so folks can easily access that information. Because obviously, there's a lot more that you can learn about this that we can discuss here.
I said, don't take my word for it. Go listen to people. Like, I'm a student. I've only been studying this for 7 years. These people have literally put 20 and 30 years of their life into studying this, and they fill auditoriums with thousands of people wanting to learn from them. So go listen to Hamza Yusuf, listen to Suhaib Webb, listen to Zaid Shakir, because they're who the American Muslim community is listening to. And the message that they send is nothing like what you're hearing from,
mainstream media.
Your extremist in Pakistan, or your ISIS guy in Iraq.
Will Cawley, I want to say thank you. I really appreciate your time tonight.
Thanks for coming on.
I think it's been very enlightening, as has been, everything I've ever read about Islam, and when I've taken the time to learn on my own, as opposed to just listening to what people say. So thank you for the call tonight. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yep, that's
Thanks
Muslims for Liberty, by the way. Muslims, the number 4 Liberty, and send me over that link, and then I'll pass that on. And thank you, Will. Let's go real quick to Mike, the one call where you can call about anything tonight here on Free Talk Live. Mike, you're in Ohio. You're on Free Talk Live. Go.
Hi, I'm a non-religious person in a mostly Christian area. I'm often seeing a lot of hate for Muslims whenever the topic of Muslims come up. And I'd like to know how to encourage some empathy in those people. If you have any ideas.
Boy, that is a good question. I guess
education's the best thing I can suggest is that people fear what they're ignorant of,
right,
and what's different from them.
It helps if they can meet a nice Muslim to talk to and connect with on a human level rather than just listening to people talk on the radio.
Islam is very similar to Christianity, and it's
shockingly similar.
Well, it's what it came from,
right?
And so once people can find out more about it, they can understand it more. Then that's that. I tend, the way I come from this is, hey, leave your religion at the door on this. This is about people getting along with each other. And, if you're playing teams, oh, well, my team's better than your team, you're never going to get along. It's like putting a Yankees fan and a Red Sox fan in a room and telling them to talk about baseball. They're going to fight.
Good answer. Mike, thanks for your call tonight, man. I appreciate hearing from you. Oh, and I should have said this to Will Cawley. Assalamu alaikum. That is like the standard greeting and goodbye when you are a Muslim.
Isn't it like wishing for peace or something?
And the response is, it translates to peace be upon you.
Uh-huh.
And the response is, what was it?
Alaykum lakum lam.
Something like wa alaikum salam.
Okay, I just make some noises like it.
Well, anyway, I think it's been enlightening, and we'll see you tomorrow night, because, Mark, you'll be here for the live Sunday edition.
Indeed.
At that time. See you online in the meantime at freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.